this has been in the news a little bit recently. I guess we could talk about this. Someone asked, "Do you guys like Ilhan Omar?" So I'll answer last. You guys go first.
Donnie, you want to go first?
So I saw a poll that said that Conservative Party members in the UK were Islamophobic because, and one of the reasons they gave was that 41% said that they prefer, or something like that, maybe 61% said they'd prefer that their leader was not Muslim. And I don't know why that's Islamophobic. I don't know. That doesn't count to me. I don't know. I don't want Ilhan Omar in charge. I want like the Pope in charge. So I think that. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't know. I think she's just she praised Madeleine Albright the other day and like said that like,
oh really?
Yeah, and I was like, but here, this is the way that I look at it, is that she was not really like a major political kind of person like a year ago. She like a year ago today or yesterday or something like that, it was when she announced for Congress. And same with like AOC and stuff like that. It's they're young people mostly kind of like learning their way through things, and like people shouldn't have that kind of weight on them of being like perfect on all the different issues and stuff. But at the same time, then you shouldn't invest all your hopes in them because people just, I don't know, people have opinions and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I don't know. It's not like you can't like expect the leaders to fix everything, I guess, kind of thing. So
yeah. Do you think do you feel basically the same way about her as you do AOC?
Yeah, sort of. Like I don't know. I guess you kind of have to look at it like, again, it's one of those things where it's statistic wise, like where you go, okay, maybe like a few percent of Congress is sort of more progressive populist kind of thing or something like that, and then that's pretty good. But you want to make it like a bigger number. It's not like, it doesn't really matter what the individual is saying as much as you kind of have to, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like it's like a culture. It's like a whole overall thing. Like there's always been radical people at the margins in Congress and stuff or other places. Like there's always been people who have a lot of good, in my opinion, like, good opinions on a lot of things. And like even in say the UK or in Canada and stuff, there were people who, were quite, extreme in their own ways or whatever. It's not like that's always represented because it's always part, there's always like say urban districts that will maybe give a chance to someone a bit more radical and stuff. But I think, the trick is you got to spread out a bit from that. I don't know. Like you can't like just, it's always going to be exciting to hear someone on the news say stuff that makes sense kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't know, compared to like, if everyone else is like, how do we solve the Iran problem? And then you have people on the edge kind of saying like, this whole logic doesn't make sense, then that's better. But it's just not like, doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to change. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been feeling, pretty much the same way. I have enjoyed like things like her denouncing Israel, which is like what U.S. politician has done that?
Yeah.
And at the same time, what is really going to change from that?
Yeah.
But I mean, at least sister is in Congress, right? And I don't know. See, I don't have super nuanced takes on any of this because, like, I keep up with politics a decent bit, but I don't know. I think Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just started a podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And then I would be more informed because I would probably subscribe to that.
Yeah.
Cool. So, recently Ilhan Omar joined this like pride parade thing.
Oh,
And I think it caused a little bit of talk. So I think a lot of left-leaning folks are looking at that as, oh boy, look, a Muslim who isn't throwing gays off of rooftops. This is great. See, this is proof that Islam is pro-gay or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, very misleading. I don't think that's exactly the takeaway that one should have about this. And from what I see on like Muslim Twitter, which, I mean, Muslim Twitter is a zoo. It's just not a very intelligent space where people
It's
like
crazy.
say, yeah, it's straight up lunatics. But I think that I don't think a lot of Muslims are really enthusiastically pro LGBT pride stuff. There is kind of this people of college woke sector of the Muslim population that are all about it, but most Muslims are conservative about these things. Islam doesn't promote like homosexual behavior or anything. It's not something that it's really allowed. So, and that's how most people feel about it, like that we shouldn't be promoting something that is against our religion. So,
yeah,
I mean, I think people go way too far with it, but that's basically what the religion says and what most people think about it. So, as far as Ilhan Omar getting involved with it as a Muslim, I think that a better way to look at it is that she's an American politician and she is representing some of her constituents, and that's fine. That's her job.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between saying like, my religion says this is good or bad, or that this is something you should do or shouldn't do, and then making that your whole like political policy position.
Yeah.
The country isn't run by Sharia. The people she's representing aren't by and large Muslims, so that really shouldn't be a huge part of the way she interacts with people at large, especially non-Muslims. Like most of people in the LGBT community are not Muslims, so it really is neither here nor there what Islam has to say about it. It should maybe inform the way she treats people and stuff, but that doesn't just mean that, okay, well, I don't necessarily think that this is acceptable. But Islam also tells you to be nice to people. It tells you to be charitable. It even in the Sharia itself, like if there are non-Muslim communities living under Sharia, they get to determine their own laws about things. So
Yeah.
I actually raised the point with some people in a group chat about the idea of like, well, let's say there's a caliphate that comes to power tomorrow. I think you could make the case for LGBTQ being like its own religion is not the right term, and that's not even an Islamic term, really. We have the term deen, which means more like a way of life kind of a thing. So, I mean, people talk about it as a lifestyle, so that is, I think, perfectly in line with this idea. They could have, they could write up a little statement about like what exactly what's acceptable behavior in their community and what's not, and then the caliphate would just go by that. That's how they would govern over that community. That's what happened with people historically. Like Zoroastrians used to have incestuous marriages where sons would marry their own mothers, and that was accepted under Sharia because that's something that religious community wanted to do. So, that. Anyway, my point is being that people, I think, if you're in a religious or a faith community that doesn't accept homosexuality, which is like all of them essentially, that doesn't mean that you need to be some kind of like full-throated anti-gay guy or whatever.
Yeah.
You can like support people's, hospital visitation rights. Like, why shouldn't they have that? And even same-sex marriage, I mean, doesn't mean you have to have them in your mosques and churches and all that kind of thing. But as far as like the state law goes, I don't see why that's such a big deal. I mean, if we're going to have people, like, no one gets all crazy about like bacon being sold or alcohol being sold, but for some reason LGBT stuff gets like this special treatment as like an especially pernicious thing or whatever, which is really just insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one more thing I guess I should say about that is that someone said that that they saw where I was coming from with this, but that, you know, we as Muslims shouldn't accept the terms that is kind of out there, the prevailing idea that like gay people are born gay and that's just who they are, and to like not acknowledge that, or to not give them to not validate that identity is wrong, basically. And I think what's happened is that a lot of people on the conservative kind of religious perspective, they do accept those terms. They basically say, yes, you were born that way, but God said that you need to be punished for that and that you're evil for being that way, which is, that's like a genocidal logic. That's really cruel. It's really, God didn't make these laws to give people license to be petty and tyrannical and stuff. I think that the essential point of having guidelines and moral rules around sexual behavior is that it's supposed to cultivate, like, all these rules in general are supposed to cultivate like a morally sound society. And if your idea of a morally sound society is like breaking into people's houses and finding out what they're doing in their bedroom and then punishing them if they're doing something wrong, that's, you know, that's not right. You know, we can believe that people have various impulses, and that there's a certain way to channel these things, a certain way to behave in public and everything, and that's not exactly what the prevailing ideas are about that. Like, that liberal society kind of says, whatever you feel like you want to do, you should just do that, and no one has the right to say anything or to dislike it or whatever. You can disagree with that, I think, and in fact, you should disagree with that. I think that it's better to have an idea of like moral standards in society rather than just a free-for-all. But that also includes being like a decent person to people who you disagree with, and just being like basically kind person. That should be the first thing. And then after that, if you have specific ideas about various behaviors and stuff, that should really be secondary. So anyway, that's my spiel on that. People have sort of been asking a little bit about my take on these things, because I can be, you know, sometimes I make brash jokes and sometimes I say things that sound like super liberal or whatever. So I wanted to kind of clarify for people who are interested in that. So yeah, can't wait to get the responses for this one. So.
Well, I don't know.
We'll see.
Sure.